At the beginning of the 6th century BC, there was no paramount political power in North India. We have references to Mahajanapadas, which were in place of multiple Janapadas. The term Janapada literally meant a well-populated, definite territory. The prefix Maha in front of these Janapadas clearly shows that it was a larger kind of political entity than the original Janapadas, and the ruler of these Mahajanapadas definitely exercised a huge amount of power. The Buddhist text Anguttara Nikaya gives us a list of these Janapadas where we find references to 16 Mahajanapadas, which is known as Solasa Mahajanapada. Now, if we look at the location of these 16 Mahajanapadas, we find that these Janapadas were located mainly in the Ganga Valley. Some of them were in the northwest part of India, in the Deccan, and in the region to the east of the Ganga Valley. The major Janapadas like the Magadha, Anga, Mallas and the Vriji Confederacy was located in the Middle Ganga plains. To its west was the Kashi, Koshala and Vatsha Janapada. To its further west was Kuru, Panchala, Shurusena and Matsho, and we find that in the northwestern part of the subcontinent we have the Gandhara and the Kamboja Janapada. To the south we have in the parts of Godavari we have the Asaka, and in western and central India it was the Avanti and Chedi Janapada. Thus, this was the geography of the Buddhist Pali canonical texts. Now, out of these Janapadas, it was Magadha who became very important and finally ruled the entire northern part of the Indian subcontinent. There is another text called the Jaina Bhagavati Sutra, which gives us a different list of the Janapadas, and if we look at the list, we find that Kashi, Koshala, Vatsha, Magadha, Anga, these territories were common, but we have certain references to certain lists which were more in the eastern part of the Indian subcontinent. And this shows that this Bhagavati Sutra list is much later than the Buddhist text Anguttara Nikaya. Now, in case of the Janapadas, we find that it had mainly the monarchical structure of polity, except the Vrijis and the Mallas who had taken recourse to the Ganashangha type of polity. The aim of the monarch was to maintain an order, not to have social equality, but to maintain a society where the Varnashrama Dharma would be upheld and a kind of society where order would prevail among the different social groups. So naturally, the task of a monarch was much more important and it needed astute efficiency and military power. Among the Janapadas, the first and foremost Janapada which came into prominence in 6th century BC was the Kashi Janapada. We have references to Pali canonical texts where we find that the rulers of Kashi were always very eager to become the paramount power. Aggarajanum is the term used, and Sakala Jambudvipa, that is, they wanted to be the ruler of the entire subcontinent. There was a protracted struggle between the Kashi Janapada and the Koshala Janapada, and we find that Koshala later on subdued Kashi when Prashenajit, the ruler of Koshala, came into power. Now the question is, why was Kashi so important? If we look at the location of Kashi, we find that Kashi had its capital in Varanasi, which was bounded by two rivers, Varuna and Asi. Varuna in the north and Asi in the south. And it was a very important riverine trade center and very important port of the Ganga Valley. It was located in a trade route, and the economic resources of Kashi is mentioned in the Jatakas, it's mentioned in the other Buddhist literature. So we have fleet of merchants moving around Kashi, and so control of Kashi was very important for the Koshalan monarch. And we shall see that later on, even Magadha was very much eager to have Kashi within its fold. As for Koshala, in the beginning, when the ruler of Magadha was Bimbisara, Proshenajit and Bimbisara had a very close tie, and we do not have any reference to any struggle between the two powers. But later on, after the demise of Bimbisara, when Ajatashatru came to power, he was very much against the Koshalans, and we have stories where it is referred to that Ajatashatru actually tried to curb the power of the Koshalans. Now, what we see among these Mahajanapadas is that the struggles between some of the Janapadas continued, and there was an attempt by an important Janapada to have control over the other Janapadas and thus extend the power and politics of their own territory. Next to Kashi and Koshala, we have references to another Janapada, which is the Anga Janapada. Anga was a very important territory in eastern Bihar, and it is presently identified with the Bhagalpur region. Actually, the capital of Anga was Champa, and it was also referred in text as Champapura. So, control of Champa would give any monarch an added advantage of being possessed of the resources of the riverine trade network. Champa was connected with distant lands. Ships from Champa sailed to Subarnabhumi. Subarnabhumi is the region of Southeast Asia, and from the very early times, we have now archaeological evidence to suggest that Eastern India had close maritime linkages with countries of Southeast Asia. So, if we look at the entire geography, we find that the 16 Mahajanapadas were located from the northwestern frontier to eastern Bihar, from the Godavari, that is from the Deccan region, to the region of the Mallas and this North Bihar. And so, under the western part, we have Allahabad, the prime locations, where Allahabad in the west, that is Koshambi, and in the east, we have Anga. Only among the more important Janapadas, Avanti was outside the Middle Ganga plains. Otherwise, all the Janapadas were in the Middle Ganga plains. And here it is important to remember that this is the time, that is 6th century BC, is the time where we have references to second urbanization. Thus, control of Champa by any power was important, for it would give them the revenues which was desirable for having a strong state foundation. Next to Champa was Magadha. We have to keep in mind that Magadha was initially a weaker power, but with the coming of the Mauryas, it was Magadha who actually controlled the entire Indian subcontinent. So it became, the power of Magadha became a pan-Indian power. Just prior to 6th century BC, the Magadhan ruler was the family of Brihadratha. But from 6th century BC, we have a new family ruling in Magadha, and this was the Haryanka family. This Haryanka family is very important in Indian history because its first ruler was Bimbisara, who was a very important military leader and an astute politician. When we were talking about this different confrontations between the different powers, we have to keep in mind that different kinds of interactions happened between these powers. And these powers were often engaged in military conflicts, in truce, and also in dynastic marriages. So for Bimbisara, who was a very astute politician, he could realize that on ascending the throne, just embarking upon aggrandizement or waging a war would not suit his purpose, because he knew that in comparison to other powers, Magadha was a weaker power. So the first step he took was to contract dynastic marriages between Madra in West Punjab and getting the Koshalan princes as his wife. And this changed actually the economy of Magadha and the politics also, because the Koshalan prince brought the Kashi village, the Kasi Gamo, as a dowry for Bimbishar. So thus Bimbishar could control a part of the Kasi region, which, as mentioned earlier, was a very important region of that time. Now, with the control of Kashi and Western Punjab and having the major powers as an ally, Bimbisara embarked upon the conquest of Anga. This was the first step in his policy of expansion towards the east. Thus, the control of Champa and the possession of Kashi gave him a very strong footing, and with that, he started on his expansionist policy. Bimbisara's expansionist policy was very helpful for his son Ajatashatru, who was more aggressive and more dynamic. He wanted to get hold of Avanti. Avanti was located in the western part of the Indian subcontinent with its capital in Ujjaini. As we know that Ujjaini was also a very important trade center. It was a very important, located on a very important trade route that ran from Pratisthana to northern part, and also it was linked with the coastal parts of Gujarat. So control of Ujjaini was very important. Now when Ajatashatru wanted to control Ujjaini, so he had to engage himself in warfare with the ruler of Avanti, that is Proddatta, who was also a very important ruler. In the meantime, there was a difference between Proddatta, that is the ruler of Avanti, and the ruler of Koshala. We have a story where the daughter of Avanti ruler, that is Vashavadatta, fell in love with the ruler of Koshala, and so there was a problem in this regard. Gradually, Ajatashatru could actually defeat Avanti, and this was an important step in Magadhan expansion. His next attempt was to get hold of the northern principalities, and there was a dispute regarding the control of Kashi between the Ajatashatru and the Vrijjian Confederacy. So Ajatashatru fought the Vrijjian Confederacy with his policy of dissension, which is known in Indian history as his Machiavellian policy, where he sowed the seeds of discontentment among the Ganarajyas, and thus Vajji was totally defeated and was incorporated within the territory of Magadha. Thus now Magadha emerged as a very important power, having control of Vajji, that is Koshala and Vajji, and also Anga. The next ruler after Ajatashatru was Udayin, and the most important event of his reign was the shift of his capital from Rajagriha to Pataliputra. This shift is also very interesting because now we can understand with the expansion of the Magadhan territory, it was very important for Udayin to have a capital located in a central position rather than in a position where Rajagriha was located, so that from Pataliputra he could have access to both north, south, east and west. So Pataliputra was located in the confluence of the river Son and the Ganga, and it was also linked with the Uttarapatha. The trans-regional northern route went through Pataliputra. Pataliputra remained as a Magadhan capital for a pretty long time, and only in the early medieval period we find that there was a shift from Pataliputra to Kannakubja, that is the present-day Kannauj. The Haryanka dynasty was supplanted by the Shishunaga dynasty. Actually, it is known as Shaishunaga because the first ruler was Shishunaga. The most important achievement of this dynasty was that it could completely destroy Avanti and bring it under the Magadhan fold. We have seen that earlier Ajatashatru had tried to fight Avanti, but he was not successful in that regard. But with Shishunaga, Avanti was completely destroyed and brought under the Magadhan fold. After the Shishunaga dynasty, another very important dynasty which is represented also in the Greco-Roman literature is the House of the Nandas. We have references to the Mahapadma Nanda, the founder of the Nanda dynasty, and his nine other Nanda rulers in the Puranas. So these other rulers could have been his sons or brothers. But historically, we have reference to, apart from Mahapadmananda, we have reference to Dhanananda as the last of the Nanda dynasty, ruler of the Nanda dynasty, whom actually Chandragupta Maurya defeated and became the ruler of Magadha. Thus, with the Nanda dynasty and coming of the Mauryas began another chapter in Magadhan history where the Mauryas could entirely subdue the powers and become a pan-Indian power. Now, when this struggle for supremacy was going on between the different principalities, as mentioned earlier, Magadha emerged victorious. Now, what are the reasons which helped Magadha to become the preeminent power in northern India needs to be scrutinized. So, what we find is that when these sort of factors combine together, then it was very easy for the Magadhan monarchs with their astute political sense to have a preeminent position among the other monarchs of the time. Another important factor was the growth of the urban centers during this period. These urban centers were centers of attraction where you have a huge amount of craft specialization. Magadha, with its vast resources, both mineral and agrarian resources, could provide the platform for such kind of craft specializations. And therefore, Magadha emerged victorious in the long struggle between Magadha and the preeminent powers or the eminent powers of the 16 Mahajanapadas. When Magadha was attaining its height, we have in the 5th century BC, northwestern India facing a different kind of scenario. Around 5th century BC, northwestern India experienced an invasion from the west, and this is known as the Persian invasion in Indian history. But the brunt of the Persian invasion did not reach the Middle Ganga plains. The factors which helped in the development of Magadha was not found in any other region. And therefore, it was possible for the Magadhan rulers to have a concrete military force, having a very good foundation of revenue, taxation, and having a very strong agricultural base to move ahead from the other rulers. Now let us have an idea of the position of the different rulers apart from this major Janapadas which we were talking till now. Two important Janapadas were Gandhara and Kamboja, which were located in the northwestern part of the Indian subcontinent. Gandhara, we learned that it was ruled by a ruler called Pukkushati, and Kamboja is always mentioned with Gandhara whenever we have references. For example, even in the inscriptions of Ashoka, we have references to Kamboja and Gandhara together. So, northwestern India Janapadas were important to the extent that they were having an independent monarchical setup. They were a part of the larger trade route, but there was no effort on their part to extend themselves towards the east, and neither till the time of the Nandas there was any attempt to control Gandhara and Kamboja. So they were left alone and they survived like that. Regarding the powers that were nearer to the Magadhan area, we have references to another power called Shurosena, or referred to as Greek and Latin sources as the Shurosenois. Shurosena is present-day Mathura region, and in the Mathura region, we know that it was the birthplace of, or the area where the Krishna legend growing up. In the writings of Megasthenes during the time of Chandragupta Maurya, we find that he refers to the Shorosenoi. Mathura was always a very important center of attraction because it was well connected in the trade route, and it was also a region where you have different kinds of sculptural and craft activities. The Shorosenois are referred to in classical literature also, because we have references to Madura and Klesobera in the classical literature. Till the date of Megasthenes, the Shurosenois were important, and it is being said that in Shurosena Janapada we have Heracles being worshipped. Actually, Megasthenes confused Heracles with Krishna because both of them had certain common features. Now, apart from Shurosena in Mathura, if we go a little up, then we find that there was another Janapada which was known as the Matsya Janapada, with its capital in Viratnagara. Matsyas were presently located in the Jaipur Alwar region, and the name of the capital, Virata, is from the name of the king who was known as Virata Raja. This was also a very important Janapada, and during the time of the Mauryas, we find that many of Ashokan inscriptions were located in that region. So we have the Bairat edicts of Ashoka located in the Virata Janapada. One of the more important Janapadas were the Panchalas. The Panchala Janapada was again divided into two portions. One was the northern Panchala, which is now present-day Ahitshatra region in the Bareilly district, and the other is the southern Panchala, which is identified with the Kampilla region. In fact, the famous city of Kannakubja is located in this region. Panchalas were very efficient warriors, and we have references to the Panchalas in the epics also. They are always regarded together as with the Kurus and the Panchalas. So Panchalas as a group of people continued to exist even in the later times. And what is interesting is that in the later Puranas, when we talk about the traditional regions and they talk about the Janapadas, we find that most of these 16 Janapadas, which were located in the heartland of the Ganga Valley, are mentioned also in the later Puranas, and the geography is more or less similar, which suggests that there was not much in change in the political geography of the period. In the south, we have only one Janapada, that is the Asmaka Janapada, which is also known as the Assaka Janapada. It was located in the Godavari region, and this Janapada is also important to us because we do not have any other Janapadas referred to in the southern part of the subcontinent. So Asmaka forms the only Janapada further south in the Godavari region. So from this idea of the location of these Janapadas, we can very well surmise that the point of concentration of these Janapadas were the Middle Ganga plains. So we have during the 6th century BC, which was a very important time of Indian history, the presence and the rise of the states along with the Janapadas and the Mahajanapadas. We have different kinds of political structures. So we have two political structures. One was the monarchical polity, the other was the non-monarchical polity, which has been discussed in a separate chapter. And then we have the presence of urban centers, which also gave rise to a strong monetization and the craft centers. One of the famous Janapadas of this period was also Kaushambi, And if we look at the region which is situated in Allahabad, near Allahabad, the Kosam village, we find that the Buddhist texts, when they refer to the Mahanagara, archaeology has shown that all the elements of a Mahanagara was present in Kaushambi, because we have references by archaeologists which talk about the different hierarchical structure of the Kaushambi region. Thus, Janapadas and Mahajanapadas were very important feature of 6th century BC.